Hello and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to look at receipt capture. Brand new feature by QuickBooks and we're going to see exactly what it's like.
It's real, 'cause I can get him out of my head.
Hello and welcome to today's video. My name is Aaron Patrick. I'm a certified UK trainer, a chartered accountant, and I have my own practice. So hopefully when it comes to using the new features in QuickBooks, I'm someone who will be able to help you along. Now today what I want to look at is receipt capture itself. Brand new feature to QuickBooks. It was announced around about a year ago, but now it seems to be live in every single one of our clients we've got. And it's one of those things where it's actually going to change quite fundamentally the way our clients use QuickBooks. So I want to have a deep dive look into it, see what features, capabilities it's got, and let's make sure that we're understanding exactly how to use it. So first of all, let's have a look at what the feature looks like itself. Okay, on screen now what you'll see is we've got ourselves our nice little breakdown of QuickBooks on the left that you've probably seen before, where it's actually the desktop version and the browser version. And then on the right hand side we've got our mobile version recording as well. For this particular demo I'm using an iPhone, but don't worry, Android can be used as well. Now the whole idea about receipt capture is the idea that when you're going along or your client's going along, it's really easy for them to be able to record their receipt. I'm sure as yourself as a business owner, you've even found it tricky yourself being able to record every little receipt. I'm talking about the smallest of receipts, so even the small little ones like this. They can add up over time, and what QuickBooks has done is made it really easy for us to go in there. They made it simplified for us to be able to capture that data, to be able to get that directly into QuickBooks. And that's what we're going to look at today. So where is receipt capture held? The first part is we're going to concentrate on the left hand side. We're going to concentrate on the browser experience. And if you jump into the banking section, you'll notice that there's this now new area up here called receipts. Now the reason it's been put in the banking section is because it interacts lovely with the bank, and we're going to have a look at that, see how that works. But for now though, let's jump into the receipts. So here we've already got one receipt that's been recorded. I'm going to go through the whole experience from start to finish, but also we have the ability to drag and drop items as well. So imagine that you've been sent a copy of a receipt via email, or imagine you've already scanned a load of documents in. This is an experience where you can drag those files, put them directly into QuickBooks, and it's going to do its magic for you. Now the idea of receipt capture is basically taking away manual entry. So instead of us having to go into the new button, create an expense, and having to type all this information out from the date to the payee to the amount to any taxes involved, all that sort of stuff gets automated for us. All we're going to do is take a photo of that particular item or scan that item in, and then using a technology called OCR, it's going to take all that information out for us and put it directly into QuickBooks without us having to go through the manual process of actually filling all that information in. Let's have a quick demo then of how that looks like. Now the best way of doing it is showing you in the real world scenario, and that's going to be utilizing our mobile app. So first of all, let's make sure our mobile app's working. Signing in nice and easily there. And you'll notice that if I was to go on my dashboard, and you'll notice we have the same information. So on our right hand side we've got our mobile app, on the left hand side we've got our browser experience. Now to get an item into QuickBooks using the receipt capture feature couldn't be more simple. Basically at the bottom of your screen there you have a plus button. And from that plus button or your create button, you have the opportunity then to be able to create all these items on screen. So estimate, invoice, invoice payment, sales receipt, expenses and trip. But the one we're interested in is receipt capture. So have a look at, let's see how that works. So first of all, without you even having to consider it, it just opens up that camera for you. So here I am, here's my setup all nice and ready to go. And as you can see in front of me, I've got a few receipts to look at. Now the receipts that I'm interested in today, I've decided to put into 4 different types. So our first receipt of the day is going to be your standard fuel receipt. Could be nothing more straightforward than this. This is what I expect QuickBooks to be able to deal with quite easily. The next receipt of the day that I'm going to look at is a parking receipt. Now because this is a little bit different than your standard receipt in terms of the layout and everything else, I'm going to be interested how QuickBooks responds to this and how it takes out that information. The third receipt I'm going to try today is a multi-currency receipt. Now this one could be quite interesting because this one is in euros, so we want to see how QuickBooks deals with that. The next item I want to look at is a bill. Now, receipt capture isn't really designed for bills, so I'm not expecting this to go through very well, but it'll be interesting to see how it handles it. One thing to remember is when you bring in a receipt capture, it's only going to come in as an expense. The functionality isn't there at the moment for it to bring in anything other than expense, so it has to be something that's physically paid. In this case, this hasn't been paid yet. So if this is going to work at all, then I've got to remember this won't come in as a bill, it will come in as an expense. So it's going to be an item that's already going to be classed as paid. So you've got to be careful, is that exactly how I want to treat this? Now in this particular case, I know I'm going to get charged for that later down the line. It's already set on direct debit, so I'm not worried about making sure I make the payment. So in this case, I'm going to try it as a bill when really we would probably use it as a bill that we'll later off pay from the bank. But let's see how QuickBooks deals with it, and let's see how we can make the most out of it. Okay, so first of all, let's look at bringing in our first receipt. Okay, so let's do the receipt capture of the first transaction. As I said, this should be bread and butter really for the item itself. This is where QuickBooks should really excel, because this is your typical receipt. You'll notice as soon as I've taken the picture, it then gives me some options. Do I retake the photo? Do I need to rotate the photo? Or do I need to crop the photo? So have I missed a little bit out of there? That photo came out first time, perfect. So let's use this photo. And you'll notice it then closes the screen straight away. None of this having for me to wait in and go and put any information is just done. And you get a nice little notification saying receipt uploaded. Go to QuickBooks Online and go to add the receipt to your books. I'm going to use this feature, capture another receipt. I'm going to go straight into the next one. Now with this particular receipt, there isn't actually a monetary value on it. I'm going to see if it understands the fact that I'm almost prompting myself to remind to put that information in. So it should be able to pick the date, it should be able to pick where it was done, everything else should be there, so the name and everything else, but there's no monetary value there, so I'm expecting it to want me to come in and actually put that figure on for me. So we'll see how it deals with that. The other thing about that transaction as well is it'll appear on my bank account. So it's interesting to see that without the monetary value, is it going to be able to kind of prompt me to use that against that transaction? And we're going to see that together. The next transaction I want to put into QuickBooks is going to be a European, so a multi-currency receipt. Let's see how QuickBooks handles that one. Now you'll see on this one, I think it's captured everything quite well, but it's probably going to be worth me using that cropping feature just to bring in those last couple of items in case they are actually essential later down the line. Once I press crop, use this photo, it's just the same as before. It's going to upload that receipt for me and get that one into QuickBooks. Now this next one, I don't have much hope for in terms of the way that it's going to deal with the information, but it'll be interesting to see nonetheless. Now, what I'm going to do is take a photo of a bill. I've said this before, QuickBooks Receipt is not designed to deal with bills, but it's going to be interesting to see how QuickBooks does, in fact, go in and put this information onto QuickBooks. But it is interesting to see how QuickBooks deals with this. It's accepted the receipt and it's going to go and try and deal with it in the same way. Let's see how it's dealt with. Okay, with those 4 receipts now into QuickBooks, let's have a look and see how that's been dealt with and where it's appearing so far. If I jump into the banking section and jump into my receipt section, you'll notice that I've still got that one that was there originally, but now I have 4 processing at the top, and they're those 4 transactions we've just uploaded. You'll see if I click on them, I get a nice preview of them, and it tells me it can take up to 15 minutes for me to be able to get that information in. Now that's pretty quick, and I'll be really impressed if we can get it in at 15 minutes, but let's see how long that does take. Okay, now while I'm waiting for those transactions to come through, let's replicate what would happen if they were already on the bank account. So all I'm going to do now is quickly upload a bank feed. So what I'm going to do now is upload some bank transactions which replicate those 4 transactions we've just dealt with. And my idea here is I want to see how it deals with the transactions as they come in on the bank. So as you can see on screen there, the 3 transactions I'm going to be bringing in. The first one being that NCP car parking ticket. Now this one doesn't have any amount associated with it yet. As you can see, it's £10.50 that it costs. So let's see if QuickBooks can deal with that appropriately. The next one is the one I know I'm pretty confident it's going to deal with quite well. £24.15 Costco. Waffle Factory, this is in as euros. I've cheated a little bit here and I've included it in at £22.80 pound coins as well, just to see if it does at least associate it with it without doing any fancy multi-currency. What I will do is I'll also bring in another transaction, a separate transaction, which will be this in kind of a euros, in a pounds to euros conversion. Virgin Media. Now remember, that's a bill. And that actual post there, that 19th of the 3rd, 2020, is in the future from today's date. So it'll be interesting to see how QuickBooks copes with that, how it can deal with that, and how it associates it with it. We press next, press yes, and we're in. So as you can see now, I've got those transactions there. We've got our Costco transaction, which is just there because it should split nicely with the Costco. We've got NCP transaction. Again, we didn't have the monetary value when we first uploaded it, so let's see if QuickBooks can assign that correctly. PC World, it's just a red herring, nothing to do with any of the transactions in there. Hopefully it doesn't get confused and start trying to attach anything to there. Virgin Media, now that's actually the future. So that transaction there hasn't appeared, hasn't actually happened yet today, and it relates to a bill that was the 3rd of March 2020. So let's see if QuickBooks can associate that and put the right information in for us. And then we've got two waffle factories. One of them is for the exact pound amount as per the euros one, so it's basically not taking into account anything to do with exchange rate. And the one I've just kind of put in a quick exchange rate functionality there. So let's see how QuickBooks deals with that. Okay, it's been less than 10 minutes. I'll put down below exactly the time frame based on when we took the photo to when it actually came through. But in my mind, it feels like it's been about 8 minutes or so. So now those transactions, by the looks of it, have all come through nicely. What I want to do now is go through these transactions and see how QuickBooks has done with it. Let's go with the one we know is going to deal with quite well, and that's going to be our Costco sale account. So as soon as you click into the transaction, it's going to bring up a lot of information for you. Now remember, this is the first time we've dealt with this here, so there is some information we've got to tell QuickBooks. It's going to learn as we go along, but let's first of all explain what's going on. So Costco, that was never an AP anyway, so let's put a brand new one in there and let's add that going forward. And that means going forward, I expect it to be able to see that transaction and be able to put it back in there. We are going to, after this, take a photograph of a duplicate item and see how QuickBooks dealt with it. So let's see that in the future. Saying how my bank account, I'm going to do business bank account here. Now again, it's going to base it on kind of the card being used and everything else. It should associate that with that transaction, and now it's going to know what it is. It's picked up the payment date perfectly for me. Really happy with that. And it's given it an account category of entertaining. Now, just like bank accounts and when you're going through bank accounts, QuickBooks will do its best to be able to put the best amount of category and try and put the best category against what the transaction is. It's going to use machine learning. It's going to look at what other people have done. It's going to use loads of fancy algorithms to be able to try and associate the right category with the right transaction. That does not mean that it's always going to be right. So this is where you've got to be prepared to be able to go in there, and your job or your client's job when they click on that save and next at the very bottom there is to make sure they're happy with that category selection. QuickBooks will learn as it goes along, and it will learn that next time Costco comes in, it should deal with it the way we're going to deal with it, things like that. But it's still your responsibility. It's still you as the person has to go in and make sure you're happy with it. So in this case, I'm going to put it to traveling. Description wise, I'm happy with Costco wholesale. I might want to put petrol station in there just so I know exactly what it was to do with. And you'll notice it's picked up all the correct information. So on the receipt in front of me, £24.15, £24.15. The VAT, £4.02, £4.02. Again, I haven't touched any, I haven't typed any of that information in. It's brought that information in for me, saving me a lot of time. There's an even option down here for a memo. I can put in a memo in there if I need to. I've got a cancel option on the left hand side if I want to cancel this and come back to it again. I delete this receipt if actually I've realised that that receipt should never have gone into QuickBooks in the first place. Then our old sticky button appears again. Now remember the sticky button? Click on the arrow next to it, you get the option to see what else is hidden behind there. Whatever option you choose, it's going to remember that for next time you come to it. We've got 4 to do here, so it does make sense me using the save and next because it's going to save that transaction, move to the next one. But if I do need to do save and close, it will save the transaction and close it down. Now this is interesting. It's come back through and it says no bit matches found. Create a new expense for this receipt. If a matching transaction comes into QuickBooks later, we'll mark it as a match. Now this is interesting. It's not seen that it's already in the bank account, but we don't really expect it to. Remember, when we put it into the bank account, we left it in the full review section. We've left it there so we haven't actually done anything with it. Now it'll be interesting to see what happens when we actually add that later date. So I'm happy now to press create expense. Okay, so this is interesting. So as you can see now, I'd already locked that period down and QuickBooks hasn't allowed me to create the transaction. It's not giving me the option to put a password in. Now that's the sort of thing we need to be going back to QuickBooks for, giving them a little feedback so they can implement that. What we should have happened here is a nice little pop-up button should appear, giving us the opportunity to go in and go, oh, okay, I just need to put that in there. So all I need to quickly do is go in, go to my settings, and all I'm going to do is for this particular one is remove my close the books functionality. But that was an interesting one to see though. That's quite interesting how that's worked out. Now one thing I've thought about is let's see both of those scenarios in play. So let's take the Costco wholesale petrol and the NCP transaction. Costco wholesale petrol, we know, hasn't gone through the full review section. It's just sat there on full review at the moment under banking, and we know we've got to deal with that appropriately. So from the receipt section, I'm going to jump into Costco petrol. Now, one thing I like about this is it's remembered all that information. Remember we had that error message saying we couldn't post it? Well, it seems to have remembered that for us. It's come back here. Now I've removed the functionality of not being able to post to a prior period. I should then get the option to create the expense. So I've jumped into the banking section and curiously it's not come up as finding a match for this transaction. That's a little bit disappointing. I expected it to have understood that one. So let's see if we can figure out why. So I'm going to go find match. Ah, excellent. So as soon as I press find match, it's then looked into the transaction a little bit deeper and then thought about what it could be. Now I don't know why it never found it originally, but at least we know using the find match functionality is going to force it. I think that means that with this feature being brand new, there's still a few things that QuickBooks is still trying to figure out. Maybe at this point then, as a safety precaution, we should be using that find match more frequently until we know that that bug has been sorted out. Okay, before I go and do the NCP transaction, I've had a bit of an idea and I've thought about, well, what about if I go into this NCP transaction on the bank account and add it straight away? Is that the best way? Now, remember with the NCP transaction, this particular transaction, we don't know the monetary value just from the receipt itself. So on this receipt, there is no indication of how much that cost me. That was only known as soon as I went out of the bank, out of the actual car park. But it's come through my bank, so now I know how much it is. I want to see if it's going to add it appropriately. So all I'm going to do is just going to put an exempt transaction in. I'm going to add that transaction. So now that NCP transaction is sat there waiting for me to go in there and import it in. Right then, so I'm jumped back into my receipt page. I'm going to jump into NTP and see what information it's got for me. Now in this case, I'm going to put NCP as my supplier. I'm going to tell it that it came from my business bank account. It's picked up the date. It knows that it's traveling expense, so that's quite clever. It's put NCP as description, so it's read NCP up here, but it doesn't know the amount. Now, one thing I don't know is going to be able to do is if I put a 0 in here, put a 0 in here and also say that it was exempt. If I save and next now, let's see what happens with a 0 transaction. The tax amount on this is greater or equal to the total. Are you sure you want to save this transaction? So it's warning me, it's giving me a valid warning there, but I wonder if it'll let me go forward. And it has, but because there's no monetary value associated with it, it can't match it. So it can't just know that NCP on that date must be that transaction. Okay, so that's quite interesting to understand. Okay, so imagine that I've now gone in and I've realised it was £10.50. So let's put £10.50 in here and press save and next. Okay, so now what it's done is, because we've got that £10.50 in there, it's found the match for me. That's really encouraging. So now what it's basically done, it says, right, I found the match, £10.50, ready to go. One thing to also note is, now that I've put that £10.50 in, if I was to return back to this page beforehand, before I even go in there, it's going to have found that transaction for me. So you can see there, one record found, NCP, really happy with that. So if I press match, I went back to my banking, looked at the reviewed transactions, looked down at NCP, you'll notice everything's been updated for me and I now have my receipt attached. I'm quite happy with that. I think that works really well, and that's exactly how I expected that to run. Okay, let's go for more complicated transactions. It's definitely come to my attention though that the best thing to be doing before I go into my receipts is to clear down my bank. So I've learned that now. So I'm going to go and put my Virgin Media in, 20%. Technically that's computer expenses. It's internet costs, but let's just put it in as computer running costs. That's fine by me. And add that transaction. Those Waffle Factory ones, I'm going to batch action them. I'm going to put them both against entertaining. And just to make things nice and clear, I'm just going to put no VAT against them. I don't want any VAT issues. Okay, so those items are now in QuickBooks through their various areas with Virgin Media at the top there. So let's go and see how receipts are dealing with it now. Okay, so this is interesting. QuickBooks has actually recognised the Waffle Factory. Unfortunately, as I said before, this is actually a European transaction. So it's not quite done what I expected it to do, but it just shows how it can work. So let's deal with that one first. Oh, and even more interestingly, when the match is found, it doesn't need me to go through doing all that edit details element. It's taken me straight to the match, and it's basically said, well, you've already provided that information once, why have to go through it again? And all it's going to do now is attach this photo to that transaction. So in that case, that's really, really good. It's a shame it didn't think about it from a multi-currency point of view, but obviously that's something that probably will be looked at a later date. So I'm happy to match that one. Now I expected it to have found that match on there, but one thing to bear in mind in fairness to this is it was quite way away in the past. So maybe QuickBooks doesn't quite look at it that it could have been particularly that item, because it's quite far away from when we because it's quite far from when the bill was made, so the 3rd of March, to when it was paid. So if I go in and have a look at this transaction, yeah, so it's put this as a payment date of the 3rd of 3rd 20. Now let's roll with that date and let's see if that works. PAYE, I'm going to have to create a brand new one again. And bank account, I have to tell it came from the business bank. Now I'm pretty comfortable next time it sees it, it's going to put that information in for me. So if I press save and next, here's the key. Now it's not found that match. So that is interesting. So with that then, if I create this, I have potential of duplicating my items. Now, I have two options here. I can create the expense and move on. Then I can go back into my Virgin Media and I can assign the two together. I can match one against the other, merge them, and we should be okay. What I'm going to do this time though, just to see how it works, is if I change that payment date. And I actually put that to the 19th, which is the day the direct debit came out. If I press save and next now it's found that match. So that could be the key then. It could be the key that we need to make sure that we go in there and we match it as we go along. Okay then, so let's review what's happened on bank. I jump into reviewed, jump into Virgin Media, and as I expect, that receipt's now been attached for me and everything's been updated. So I'm happy with the way it's dealt with that. I think that that's kind of what I was expecting from this to begin with.
Let me take a moment to talk about our sponsor, Boffix.com. Boffix.com. What they do differently is they have one subscription to offer all your business needs. It could be accounting, virtual office, call handling, IT services, legal or workspaces. they've got you covered. From an accounting point of view as well, then get you options where you can actually look at fantastic deals, and they can even offer you QuickBooks subscription. If you want a QuickBooks subscription, these guys have got you covered. They'll be able to offer you the best rates and best deals you've got going, and offer you support on top of that as well. Also, if you are interested in them, you can look at any price point that you want. So whatever your business needs, whatever your financial commitments are, you can go along, put in the details you need, and then you can decide how much it's going to be worthwhile to you. So thanks for Bofix for supporting this video, and hopefully you guys can use them to be able to grow your business.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and post a duplicate transaction. I'm going to take that Costco. I'm going to try and do a duplicate transaction. I'm going to take that Costco transaction. I'm going to post it. As you can see, this time around, it's just going to require a quick crop in. Crop, use this photo, and let's see how that's actually gone through. So it'll be interesting to see how that's worked. Now, as a test to see how accurate QuickBooks is, we're going to use one of the competitors to QuickBooks and see how they dealt with this information. So I've jumped into one of the competitors, and I'm going to take a photo of this one that we've already looked at. That was our information. One of the differences on this particular item is it's going to ask me what type of payment account it is, and that's quite different to how we normally use. So I could say that I paid via my card, my credit, or however I made the payment. So then it knows automatically, or it's asking that little bit of information from us. Let's quickly take photos of the others. Now for our bill. For this competitor, it actually uses and can actually deal with bills quite easily. So let's see how it handles this one. Okay, those three have been uploaded. One of the differences with the competitor as well is you get a notification when it's been uploaded. It will be interesting for us to compare the two products. So the competitor versus QuickBooks, see how well it is. Now, QuickBooks have only just released this feature, so I expect the competitor to be able to, handle some things a little bit better and everything else. But it'll be interesting how close and how small the gap is. Now, a lot of people have been asking or surmising that the release of this receipt capture feature is going to be the end to some of these competitors, but I don't really see that. For my firm, I'm still going to be using both. I'm still going to be telling my clients that every time they go to a coffee shop, get your QuickBooks app out, take a photo of a small receipt. I know it's going to deal with it really well. But when it comes for us doing our bookkeeping for our clients that we're doing bookkeeping for, we're still going to be using some of the competitors out there because it makes our life quicker and easier, and we can get through work much more efficiently. So I think there's a place for both of them. Now, for fairness, I'm not going to explain who that competitor is, but here's those 4 transactions up on screen now as to what's happened. Now, interestingly enough, I say there's 4 transactions, one of them's missing. If I jump into my activity, you'll notice that that second transaction, the NCP transaction, has actually been rejected. Now, I actually quite like that feature. It's basically saying this isn't a receipt, so we're just going to reject it. In this case, though, it is probably something I would want to have brought in, but that's just the way it is. So in this case, it's rejected it. I'd have to manually put that transaction in. Which, to be fair, because it was associated with my bank, it would go into QuickBooks. It's just I wouldn't be able to get that receipt on there nice and easily using this software. So the other options then, if I just quickly look at what else I've got the option here to look at what else is brought in. So the way this particular software works is you press this little icon here and it takes you in and you can see exactly what it's brought through. So in here it's actually got the wrong supplier name first of all. It's taken Ticket de Cassie, which I believe is actually just the word receipt, or VAT receipt, something like that. But it's not taken the word Waffle Factory, which is actually what the supplier would have been. So that's a bit disappointing. You do get the option to choose what that's going to be. So if I did start typing waffle in there, category wise, it's not made a guess at all. It's going to wait for you to say what it's going to be and then you put it in. But it has brought the invoice number in, so that could be quite useful. It's also decided to put it in as a bill, which is interesting. I don't think there's anything wrong with that as such, but you do have to manually go in, say mark as paid and publish as an expense to put it in as expense. So you get your bill functionality, but it doesn't always know which is which. But everything else it's brought up, £22.80, it's put 0% on. I'm happy with that with the fact this thing. I am a little bit disappointed. You do have multi-currency functionality within this software, but it hasn't automatically picked that out for me. But, you know, everything else seems to be absolutely spot. Next one it's brought in is Virgin Media. Interestingly enough, it's brought this in quite well. It's brought this in £54, £10.80 with the VAT on there. And everything looks quite right on that one. Then it's also found the Costco one as well. Jumping into there. Everything's come well into that one as well. It's brought in all the information. But when it's going to bring this in the expense. Virgin Media, it's brought in all the information as I expect. But one thing's weird is it does not decided to put this in as a bill, which is the only feature on here, which is actually, you know, different to what the other ones are. But if I was to post this particular transaction, I would just literally press publish and next. And it'll just put that information in for me. So it's very simple to how it was before. Now if I jump back into the receipts, already that Costco transaction's come through for me, so that's great. So remember this was that duplicate item. Interestingly though, it doesn't remember that should be associated with Costco. So let's put Costco in. And it hasn't remembered my bank account. So remember this is that duplicate item I put in there. Press save and next. It also doesn't realise there's also another transaction in, which is interesting because we know that's there. We've already matched it once, so let's create an expense. If I was to look at my suppliers now and jump into Costco, what I'm a little bit worried about is the fact that, yeah, I've got 2 duplicate transactions there that's brought in. So that's another thing to be aware of with receipt capture. It doesn't look like it's currently looking to see if there's any duplicate items. So that could be something to take into consideration. Maybe put some controls in place to make sure there's no problem in the future. Okay, so thank you very much for taking that time to have a look at this with me. I hope you can see that functionality-wise, this is brilliant. The idea that literally you can just tell your client as soon as they incur an expense, get their phone out, put it up, and off they go. Straight into Plus, straight into screen capture, and they can be capturing transactions as quick as that. That to me is brilliant. And that to me is where this software really, really works. So I'm happy with the way it's working there. The only bit that you've got to be careful of when you're using this is just remembering that limitation. So at this moment in time, doesn't do bills. I don't really expect it to ever really go into that functionality anytime soon. So I'm kind of understanding that that's not quite there yet. I am a little bit disappointed it doesn't understand and doesn't deal with duplicate items just yet. I'm sure that's, if we could provide some feedback, that's something they can look for. And obviously there's that other idea that for direct debits and everything else, you've just got to be a little bit acute upon that data in for now. It does work, it does save a bit of time, saves you having to find the transaction, add it manually. So there is worthwhile in doing it that way, but it's not ideal. Now, one of these ways I find this as useful as a accountant and for our client is about making sure they give us data. So what I'm doing with my clients is I'm encouraging them just to take photos of anything they find. Because one thing I have noticed is QuickBooks isn't just rejecting transactions. Remember when we looked at that competitor? Remember when we saw that item there? That was rejecting transactions that wasn't to do with bills or expenses or anything like that. Which is fine, and it's doing the job that it's supposed to do. But as an accountant, I want to have eyes on everything. I want to be the one that says, that should be accepted, that should be accepted, that shouldn't. So in my eyes, what I'm seeing this feature as being is a great tool for my clients. It's going to give me ability to be able to go to my clients and say, look, can you just add this transaction in? Can you just add those transactions as you go along? Can you just take a photo of everything you see? If you see a transaction, take a photo of it. We'll deal with it our end. And I think that's going to be really useful, and it's in a nice area in QuickBooks. This receipt section here is something that I'm really encouraging my staff and my clients to start looking at, and I want to make sure it's going to be used going forward. Also, what I do like is the fact I can jump into any of the transactions already there. Interesting to note, even though I've already accepted that Costco transaction, and that Costco transaction is in there twice, for some reason it's not bringing it in. It's bringing it in again. So this, just again, it's one of those things you've just got to be aware of these items. It's a brand new solution, so I don't expect it to be perfect every single time, but it would be interesting to know how long it's been. Okay then, so that's it. That's receipt capture as much as I can see today. Now I will continue to be playing around with this. Any other features or anything else I can see from it, I'm going to let you guys know as soon as I can. And I also want to start looking at the other features that was announced. So mileage tracker will be a good one to have a look at. The new cash flow one looks really interesting, so I'm going to have a look at that one as well. And really, any others, comment down below. Let me know if there's anything else you want to look at. Let me know if there's anything else within the receipt category that you want to look at in any more detail, and we can have a look together. So my name's Aaron Patrick. I've been your guide today. Hopefully you can see that this is a great feature. Yep, there's certain bits here that's not working as intended, but we're going to get through that. I'm pretty sure. I know QuickBooks. I know they're going to get out there and they're going to get that sorted as soon as possible. So we're going to make sure we use this to the best of its ability. And as an accountant, I really think that's going to help your clients. It's a selling feature. It makes them buying that subscription off you that little bit more enticing. And it means you as the accountant, you're going to get some real cool, easy ways to be able to get data into the system, nice and straightforward. So thank you very much. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Hopefully you're okay with the fact that I now have a sponsor on board, so hopefully that little bit wasn't too jarring, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye for now.
I say yeah. I told him I can be a fighter if you want. I'll be there to catch you if you fall. I can make it brighter when it's dark, I told him I would do it all for you, and I know you do it for me too. I can be a fighter if you want. I can be a fighter. I can be a fighter if you want. I can be a fighter if you want. All the way that I feel, yeah, I know that it's real, 'cause I can get him out of my head. I don't care what we do, everything's feeling new, even if we stay in bed.